to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we could have us remain standing for a moment of silence. We've had some very significant gun incidents and some mass shootings recently in our country, and I think it is worthy that we all take a moment to think about the families and the loss of life in those incidents. And all right, thank you. All right, first item up on the agenda is the minutes from the regular meeting of July 10th, 2010. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Second.
Any modifications or edits?
I didn't have any.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, next item up, the minutes from July 23rd, 2019, a special meeting. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Any changes or edits?
No, none for me.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Next item up for the Economic Development Commission, Jonathan Slavin, Democrat, 30 Pansy Circle, for a term of 11/16 to 11/21, and this is to fill a vacancy for Patrick McMonigal, who resigned. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Information only.
Oh, that's right, sorry. Thank you.
Do you know why Patrick resigned? Did he give a letter?
He did, I believe he moved, was my memory, is,
That's what.
I don't know if that's, typically those are included in here.
Yeah, I
don't
didn't
know if
see
that one
it.
is.
I talked to him a couple months ago. He moved off Congress.
I thought it was something like that. I thought he was doing a good job on the economic development, and I was really excited when we appointed him. Next up, appointment for approval. All right, this one. To hear, consider, and approve the following appointment is recommended by the Board of Library Trustees. Jill Brown, Democrat, from 1112 Holland Hill Road, for a term of 7/19 through 7/25. And this is to fill a vacancy for Janice Portentoso, whose term expired. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Second.
Any comments or feedback?
I have none.
No.
Yeah,
right.
thank you for your willingness to serve
Same here.
and attending today. And good luck on the board.
We've had a phenomenal conversation back a ways when you talked about getting involved in town. I'm thrilled to see this actually pan out for you, so thank you very much. Any comments from the public? All right, seeing none, we're back to the board. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, congratulations, and thank you for serving. Next up, the BURR Gardens Advisory Committee, to hear, consider, and approve a master plan for BURR Gardens Homestead, or BURR Homestead Gardens, as recommended by the BURR Gardens Advisory Committee.
There's a few edits, so this is the up-to-date copy.
Ah, okay.
Not
All right.
drastically.
Thank you very much. Oh. We don't need a motion, it's just,
In case you need a bigger.
update.
This is to hear, consider, and approve the master plan,
Oh.
so may I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
And a second.
Second.
All right, the item is now before us. Please, go right ahead.
Gentlemen, the BURR Garden Advisory Committee is actually really excited to present this new kind of future for the garden. It basically represents a consolidation of the homestead, the attempt at the new plan. It has two major features, I think, that integrate the property. The main one is the
I think that, is there any way you could speak into the microphone?
Oh, sure.
Because that way, we can hear you fine.
Okay, can you see it? Well, you have it.
We have got this.
Yeah, why
Why
don't
don't we
someone
do
hold
that?
it for the camera?
Oh, you mean,
Yeah, like,
Merrill.
yeah, that might be the best for the viewers.
Just when you speak in the microphone, the folks at home can hear you then, so it makes it,
What?
the folks at home can hear you.
Correct. You'll notice on
That's the
you'll
camera
notice on the
needs it.
plan, number one is the new garden entrance. And what that is doing is establishing a new access through the entire property. And it's going to be the Arboretum entrance. And it will be significant because we'll be reintroducing some of the Connecticut natives as well as other feature elements along the path. And it runs all the way through along Penfield Road, makes a cut across the front of the mansion, and then back around the corner by St. Paul's, and then back over to the original central axis of the homestead. And by doing so, we actually have the opportunity to not only have an educational component to the property, but it's also reimagining the former Arboretum. And with that in place, we then highlight and magnify the existing central axis off the back of the house. And what we're doing there mostly is creating a sculpture garden, which is an extension of area behind the existing esedra. And that becomes an opportunity for not only events, but actually for display of hopefully local, a couple local artists. And then in front of that would be the parterres. Parterres exist, but we're going to kind of reimagine them so they're simplified, yet also will carry an educational component for the garden, because we do think by activating it with the axis, the walk axis along the perimeter of the property, and then the educational component integrated into the parterre beds, we'll be able to establish and attract an educational feature that schools will definitely partake in. We'll be developing specs for the plant materials that will integrate into the school programming, so that, as many other institutions have done, so that we have an energy in this garden, because we really know in order to move this forward into the next generation, we have to establish roots today, so that we have the residents of Fairfield becoming, accommodating them, being acclimated to the new kind of venture that this garden can be. Because I think we have a lot more to give back to the community with this garden than it's giving back now. And I want to make sure that with the right tweaking, this really will be able to move forward, and it will become, I hope, a mainstay in the kind of the event calendar of Fairfield. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from the board? Mr. Timniak?
Is anything being removed from the current garden?
Nothing, other than there may be some existing material, but the existing material, meaning softscape, that is, a lot of it would be, if there's any being really removed, a lot of it would be along the Penfield axis, because some of that trees and shrubs have grown unattended. And some of them just need help. They need some real pruning and fertilization, but some of them just need to be removed. But all the original formal axes and structures we're not eliminating any of that. We're only actually magnifying and reinforcing what's existing.
So all the current sculptures which are out there, all the current trees which have been...
One thing that I want to change, that I already talked with Jeff Minder about it, and I believe I talked with Mike Tetro about this, and that is the 9/11 memorial. It's a significant memorial. However, I feel, and the committee also feels, that the location is not significant. And I think it warrants a repositioning for two reasons. One, not only because of the existing placement, which I think is kind of tertiary on the scale of importance, but also it gave me an opportunity, give us an opportunity to create an entrance to the garden, which is the #1 placement. By putting it there, everyone coming through the Arboretum at that entrance will encounter that. Where it is now, you kind of might find it and you might not. And I think it warrants that kind of very, public, location for this memorial.
So a couple of questions around that. One, I don't see it currently on the map.
Well,
I don't see it on the plan for the
Right.
updated section.
It's as we develop, this is just, these are all the intentions, and like we don't have specs and construction documents developed yet. Once we have the funding per concept, or garden element, then we will move forward with all of that. But that is definitely one of the things that we are doing, because I actually need that element to create a very significant entrance to the garden. And I think it's a poignant entrance to the garden as well.
So moving the 9/11 memorial is part of the master plan.
Yes.
Are there any trees coming down which have been dedicated to people or
No.
anything along those?
No, nothing. We won't, when this plan, each component of the plan is implemented, if there is a memorial, it will never be eliminated. It might be repositioned because there will be elements in the garden that might be properly relocated. Say, if we had we have an evergreen walk, part of the Serpentine Walk, one of the areas designated is an evergreen walk. If we have a memorial tree that's an evergreen and it's in an obtuse place, we would probably like to move it. And we would make that decision based on the existing location. And is it appropriate? Are the sight lines to the tree good? If some of the elements in the garden have been compacted by adjacent trees over the years, so you really can't discern the tree itself. And they've just grown into clumps. So it will require a sensitive hand, but I think, that's our work. That's what we're supposed to be doing. So yeah, we would never, for me, it's very important. I think all the committee members, it's really important that this garden is a living representation of the history of Fairfield. And that, memorials included, contemporary or not, they're all create the fabric of this homestead.
Can you show the residents at home where the 9/11 memorial is now on the map, the big map?
Yep. Currently, it's right here. And we want to relocate it to the main entrance to the Arboretum and Garden, which will be here. So those tall columnar trees will actually flank the entrance path. So it'll be I think it'll be really a beautiful gesture for us to have it. I actually feel lucky that we have it available to us.
That's all I got.
Mr. Bates, any questions?
Yeah, it looks like at the back of BURR Mansion, are you adding a patio?
No. What that is an area of, it's a parking space for a potential addition that has been discussed. Obviously, Mike Jelly has talked about it, and when I met with him and reviewed these plans, he mentioned that building. So what I wanted to make sure of, if in the future it's developed, that it doesn't encroach on the garden itself, on the plan we're creating, because there were obviously some options for that drive, and we wanted to make sure that there was enough space for any building or tent that it wouldn't,
So just to clarify, rather than a parking space, it's more of a placeholder for that future.
Oh, yeah, there's no parking spaces in this plan at all. Correct. I meant we're just holding the space. We created that space as a holding space for a potential building, because we know there's a tent there now, so that's also a location for the tent as well.
It looks like the summer house is moved.
Well, there's an option there too. The summer house we want to move. That was our our initial decision. And once functionally, it's where I think it should be. I think as a component of the entertainment venue, it's appropriate. And it's more cost dependent if it becomes prohibitive, once the bids are in, to move it. It really costs prohibitive. We will work with existing location, but then have to buttress it up. Like, there's screening that would be required for its current location, and it would have to be, we want to extend the paved area underneath, because right now it can't really accommodate a real function, even though it's used for cocktails, et cetera, for some smaller events. It's not serving the garden properly, I feel, because there's an opportunity there if it was tweaked. And we certainly want to create a special space for this. And I think with either screening in an existing and extension of the hardscape, but better yet would be the relocation, because then it has its own special space on axis with the house, which I really, really like.
All the funding's coming through grants and private sources.
Correct.
Okay, I'm good.
So where's the 9/11 Memorial relocation on your priority list? Where would you put that?
At that,
Is that number 8, Penfield Wall, road wall, fence, garden entrance?
well, actually,
I'm sorry,
it's not actually, because, you see, the priority list, while it's identifying sort of some of the major features, correct? All the major features. It doesn't preclude elements in the existing garden that would be impacted once you construct the new element. So when you put in the serpentine space, the serpentine walk, we will start, that would have an impact on the memorial. So at that point, we would, move it back. We wouldn't wait till the garden entrance per se. I think it wouldn't make, it wouldn't be logical, I think, to be honest. Again, we want to make these decisions as far as relocation or construction of garden elements based on, cost-effective selections. So it may behoove us to move certain, or consolidate or move forward an element based on the impact it will have on the existing garden, because there are a lot of, layers in this garden because of contracts and current use, and we don't want to disrupt that. So we have to be sensitive to the application of the elements, but that they're all intended, but we'll certainly always want to make the best decision to serve existing needs and the future goals.
We had a chance to step through this, and I want to thank you very much for taking me through. I'm really impressed with what you've done here, and also the creativity on the financing side at this point in time to look for another way.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Yep. To how we fund this, but I think the idea of having the committee was really originally set up to have a master plan. You've done that, so thank you for that. Second, I think this is tremendously functional from a standpoint of both the town incorporating in the garden aspects, but also creating additional opportunities and attractions to bring residents into this area. I know as I've gotten out and walked this area, I've been surprised at how extensive it is, how much is there, and frankly, how unmanaged I guess it's kind of been over time. And I don't mean that to detract from anybody. I just think that there wasn't the master plan that you've put together.
Right.
Kind of to help put this and really have a chance to emphasize some of the really cool and interesting features that are part of this. So
Right.
I want to thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And what I think is really a benefit of the funding, of the private funding and foundation or grant funding, is the fact that we then it's basically an outreach program where we allow others to learn of this garden. We have a new audience with our fundraising efforts, and which is really crucial, again, to making sure that this homestead has a long life, because we're not looking for a short gain on this. This is we're really focused on making sure that whatever we're doing back here increases the usability, of this garden, because we really see so much opportunity, and we want others to see the opportunity as well.
I think this becomes one of those secret treasure areas that most folks in town don't know about and would
Most
love a chance
people
to
in
experience.
town, I've talked to a lot of people that know BURR Mansion. they don't realize that all this property belongs to the homestead.
All the events at BURR at night.
Exactly. They don't want to venture out of the tent.
With that, any comments from the public? All right, seeing none, back to the board. Are we ready to vote?
Yes.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Oh,
And
you're
thank you very
welcome.
much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right. All right, next up is to consider and act upon tax refunds as recommended by the tax collector in the amount of $37,964.29. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Second.
Any edits or changes?
No, I confirm the number's right.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. All right, that brings us up to item 8, to hear, consider, and act on any other business that shall properly come before this meeting. Are there any items?
Yes, I have some. In light of the recent news, having 2 members of the town be placed on administrative leave, be subsequently arrested, I'm wondering if we can get an update on basically just trying to summarize. To this point, I have not been given an update by anybody other than what I've read in the news or what I've read coming out of your office. So I'm wondering if we can get an update on the recent news stories, the impact it's having on the town, who's in charge right now, and how those decisions were made.
Certainly. Did you read the statement from my office yesterday?
I did.
All right, so that answers the first question in terms of who's in charge.
So, I had a...
In terms of, we've asked Brian Carey,
All right.
who has prior experience as manager of Public Works in Stratford, before he came here to temporarily step in and help us continue to provide leadership to the Public Works Department. We are also, at the same time, reaching out, looking for an interim Public Works Director to provide some ongoing support there, too.
So and that was one of my things. So is Brian temporary until we find an interim? Has Brian reworked his agreement with the town to fulfill that role?
No, it's a temporary arrangement at the moment.
temporary. Okay.
So, I'm sorry, so we're actively searching for an interim chief, the Director of Public Works.
Since all this happened within the last 24 hours, I'm going to say yes to that, but also realize that we're looking for, in the initial term, looking for a retired Public Works Director who might be able to come in and help us out in the short term.
I got to take exception to the fact that we say within the last 24 hours. I don't want to act like we didn't know that there was a possibility that this could happen. So I guess what I'm getting to is I was a little, when I read your press releases, I was a little taken aback as to the level of surprise. I mean, we've had this discussion in executive session that there was a possibility that something like this was going to happen. So I was kind of expecting more of a plan to get us through this.
Actually, as much as we're not supposed to talk about public session items here, I'd suggest that, no, we didn't talk about certainly these 2 people being involved in something like this.
That's not my recollection from things that we were told.
I'd suggest you check the minutes, but we know we don't take minutes in private executive session.
Okay, all right. I'm going to take exception to that one. One thing that I did notice when we were forwarded the transcript of the arbitration hearing, when I read that, I think Chris and I read that last week. What concerned me is that on July 8th, when that testimony was given, it was apparent that Joe Michelangelo admitted to something. And I'm concerned about what happened in the interim there. Why was no action taken then? I mean, I assume our lawyers, Cohen and Wolf, were in that room when that happened. That should have been something like, hey, wait a second, shouldn't I be talking to Emmett Hibson about this?
I think that it is inappropriate in this body to discuss conduct of a town, at the time a town employee, but since he's on administrative leave, he's still a town employee at this point, without his notification and his presence. So I'm going to suggest
I'm not putting him on the
that's not-
stand. I'm asking you about your reaction to what you heard. I think if I was chief executive sitting in that room when that happened, it would have been like, wait a second, I might have a problem here, especially given Cotter's line of questioning. So I was a little taken aback that you had heard that, everyone in the room had heard that, yet he continued to serve in that position. So I'm just saying, I think we need to pay more attention to what's going on.
Yeah, you're going to have to be a little specific about which item you're talking about.
I will.
Okay.
I will, specifically taking the pavers home. That was part of the transcript from the arbitration hearing on July 8th. It seems like he was placed on administrative leave following a Fairfield Citizen article regarding taking the pavers home. Prior to an arrest being issued the following day, he was placed on administrative leave based upon the reaction of the Fairfield Citizen article, when this administration knew on July 8th that actually occurred, and that was part of the transcript, which is the genesis of the article being written. And to me, it looks like a month went by without anything happening, and I'm wondering, did something happen?
You're talking about the pavers that were basically scrapped. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I don't remember.
Not the way
Yeah,
the
that's not the way the article.
That's not the way the article says it.
Guys, if you want to talk to the reporter, I'd suggest talking to the reporter. The pavers, if were basically scrapped.
Your quote was, "It's not town property." But, I mean, that's definitely not the example we want our department heads leading for the rest of the rank and file, that they can take home whatever they want. We don't allow scavenging at the transfer station. Why would we allow a department head to take what you view as scrap, what he viewed as a sidewalk, a driveway, and a pathway, if the article is indeed correct? And then subsequently, he was placed on administrative leave, unless there's something I don't know, after that article was written.
The case in point, again, as I remember the transcript and testimony from Joe, he didn't take that material home. It was delivered by the contractor to his house. And the choice was either pay Julian to take it or have it delivered to that house. And I don't think that was the wisest conduct on Joe's part, but it was scrap material.
I'm stunned at that response. I'm absolutely stunned at that response. So a company which we're in the middle of a civil suit against right now, our department head is redirecting their business to his house. And that was, I guess I'm hearing from you, that was acceptable because you knew about it for a month and didn't take any action on it. That was acceptable conduct. And I'll give the example, you can't have employees taking, old TVs home or old computers home or, anything like that, which would essentially be scrap. We don't allow that, but we're going to allow this to occur, and we know about it, and we don't act upon it. It's very frustrating. As a member of the Board of Selectmen who is responsible for oversight of this, very frustrating.
Again, I think you're misstating the situation and don't appear to understand what took place. However, I don't disagree with you that it's something that shouldn't have been done by Mr. Michelangelo because of the appearance that it creates out there.
Wait,
Chris, I agree with your summation, and that's what I heard out of this too. Going forward from this point, I was concerned at the, I'm going to say, lack of preparedness on your part that this was a possibility that this could happen, that we were going to have to transition into new leadership at DPW if things went south. Here, now, I'm starting to see events unfold. After reading that testimony, it seems that there was a lot of problems down at that facility with oversight, supervision, who had the keys to what was actually occurring. This is all in contrast to what I had heard from our civil attorneys on the civil side saying, yes, we have a great case, this is what's going on, so forth and so on. Now I see the defense painting a picture of chaos down there. Then, today, I start getting emails and text messages that the Fairfield Police are down at Gould Manor on a possible related event, that stuff was dumped down there. They're down there doing an investigation. So I want to start setting the stage or start being prepared that if these tests come back from deep and they're negative, or they're showing testing positive for bad stuff that has been left at Gould Manor or dumped, we need to have a plan coming out of DPW as to where all this stuff went.
Right. And that's already underway. We basically, DEEP was requested to come in by our health department to take a look at some fill that was allocated along the sidewalk on Holland Hill Road. Those tests have been taken. There is no, when they come back, we'll take a look at if there is any hazardous material there, take appropriate actions in terms of both mitigating that. We are currently looking at where else any fill from the yard may have been used in
Okay,
town.
who's we? Because I'm assuming the point people on this are on administrative leave.
No, we've got Sands Cleary from our health department, who's very definitely taking the lead on this as
And he knows where everything that left DPW went.
No.
Okay.
That's why we're researching. We've got Brian Carey working with both Parks and Rec, Board of Ed, and the managers at DPW to see if and where any fill might have been used, so we can take appropriate actions there.
This site at Gould Manor that I've heard about today, I'm hearing that this is something that goes back several years. Is this something that we were notified about several years ago and just never acted on, or is this something that has just come to your attention?
It has just come to my attention.
Okay, so you've never been made aware that there was anything going on, that this happened years ago?
Again, this was fill put in along this edge of the sidewalk. So no, I heard about it yesterday for the first time.
Okay.
I have two other things. I just want to circle back to being put on administrative leave. Last week, one employee was put on administrative leave. In the meantime, I've been told that the responsibilities of that employee went to the other employee who was just placed on administrative leave. Did that occur?
In both cases, yes.
Okay. So again, the employee who you knew going back to July 8th had this compromised position. You gave increased duties to another employee who was placed on administrative leave for essentially the same, all involving the same case. I think that's poor judgment. I'm just going to throw that out there. The other thing, in today's Connecticut Post article, or Fairfield Citizen article, it mentioned that the finance department should have received $30,000 in rent. Instead, we paid out $27,000. Is the finance department aware of that? And did they make any remedies between the day the article was written or prior to that? Were they aware that Julian did not pay the rent due? Or is that article inaccurate?
The article's inaccurate. What happened is, as it reported in the article, that was done by an internal audit to reconcile those numbers. There was a discrepancy, and that was cleared up at the time that discrepancy was found by our finance department.
Can we get forwarded a copy of that internal audit?
Certainly.
Okay. Also, too, I'd had a discussion, even though I'm not supposed to talk to the police department about this. I want to see these warrants of arrest, the official warrants that are on file at the Superior Court.
Okay, you're asking that we ask the police department to get those for us?
Yeah, and he said he's not allowed to because of court order, but I don't understand, for some reason, I thought that stuff was public information, and I know the town has it. And quite frankly, it's concerning behavior of town employees. I think it's something this board needs to know.
Why did the chief say he couldn't get it?
He said he was under court order not to.
So you're questioning whether he actually had a court order from the state's attorney's office saying he
I'd like
couldn't
your
do that?
office to look into it. I've sent I've discussed it with him, but I want to see these warrants.
All right, we will do everything we can to get those reports.
Thank you. Warrants.
So I also want to go.
Yeah,
go ahead.
It's my understanding they should be public information too, so I don't understand why the state's attorney's office would say that, but we'll do our best to get
That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense to me either. It's just, a
Yeah, I
selectman
just-
calls and asks for something that's related to town employees. I think it should just be, here you go.
It's just, again, that might be a question for the state's attorney's office as to why they suggested that, or required that of our chief of police, but we will do everything we can to get those.
So about 2 weeks ago, there was an article in the Connecticut Post about our attorneys recommending to the chief of police that he not share any information regarding the criminal case to the Board of Selectmen because it might impact the civil case. So I just want to I'm going to get an attorney's recommendation because of the conversation we had to start this about special executive session. When you go into executive session, you discuss the case which is listed on the agenda. Any other information which is in executive session, I believe, whether it's pertinent to the case or not pertinent to the case, the only thing protected under executive session is what's discussed about the case listed on the agenda. So if our attorneys are making the distinction that there's a criminal case and there's a civil case, then I think that's important information for us to all agree upon so that we can have an appropriate conversation without violating the privileges of executive session. I think that's something we need to come to an agreement on.
Well, I don't think there's any disagreement. I think what you said is appropriate. You only discuss in executive session what's listed on the agenda to discuss. I think the attorney's letter that you're referring to really had no impact. I think that the police have made it clear from day one they don't discuss criminal cases and don't give updates on criminal cases to the public. The attorney basically was asking them to do what they naturally do. So they were following their past practice, their policy in terms of not updating anybody on criminal cases. If the attorney hadn't written that, they would not have given any updates to the Board of Selectmen or any other town officials. So that letter really had no impact.
So your position is that we never discussed the criminal case in executive session. We only discussed the civil case.
In terms of the criminal case, we don't know anything about it, so it's hard to discuss it.
Okay, so then your reading of that would answer my question.
Okay, anything else to discuss at this time?
Is there any other information you want to provide to the residents of the town which may be coming out, which you may be aware of, which the board is not aware of?
We do have a statement coming out on the Gould Manor situation so that we have clarified that for everybody. That should be issued as we always do. You will get emails on that with that document as soon as we have that. And it should be out now.
Sorry, I don't have my calendar. Does anybody know when our next meeting is?
2 weeks from today.
It's 2 weeks. I'm thinking, when does the civil start up again? September? Civil?
Correct.
Okay, I'd like to, if that will provide enough time for us to talk to Cohen and Wolf ahead of time, because I really find that testimony in the arbitration hearing disturbing, and given the fact that, Joe was one of our experts that they were going to rely on now being on administrative leave, I think we really need to rework this strategy.
So you raise a good point, Ed. I'd like to go back. The reason why the civil case, I was told by our attorneys, came to an end was because that there was a raid.
It didn't come to an end.
It paused, it postponed, it stalled.
The attorneys on the other side asked for the delay.
Delay, okay. But it was delayed because we were told about the raid. All right. So again, I think at that point, we know about the raid. It's only a matter of time before the newspaper finds out about it. I'm stunned at how we're not ahead of the information and we're reacting to what the newspaper says. I think that's a disappointment.
Yeah, we didn't have that information ahead of the newspaper, that the search warrants were kept confidential for 2 weeks, and that's when they were released to the public. That's the way the state's attorney's office has structured it, and that's how they're providing us the information. And they are not giving the town any heads up on that ahead of time. Otherwise, it would be available to the two of you.
Well, I mean, in that sense, the investigation's been going on for 2 years. Clearly, members of the town, employees of the town, have been interviewed by the police department. It never got back what questions they were asking, what direction. The HR never looked into this. It was all just, we're not, nothing. I'm disappointed.
That's how police investigations work.
Anything that's happened since this started happening, do we still have the same people? Are you still relying on the same people you would, such as Emmett for Human Resources, Stanton as town attorney? Have you brought in any other attorneys to assist you through this?
In which case are you talking about?
Criminal.
Again, we have.
I shouldn't say criminal. Let's say the employment issues. I mean, is this something that crossed Emmett's desk and he said, "This is out of my wheelhouse. We need to go here"?
Not at this point.
Okay. All right. And so for that aspect, and Stan Lesser's still been the primary advisor on affairs that are relating to that.
The employment issues are primarily Emmett Hipson, because he is both an attorney and our HR director.
Okay.
So he's probably the most knowledgeable person about human resource and labor law in town.
Okay.
And he seems to have an excellent background, has got some great experience there. I'm not sure there is somebody better qualified than that at this point, but if we needed somebody, we'd certainly bring somebody in. But that hasn't been necessary up to this point.
Have you had any more, since the last time we were at Cohen and Wolf for the arbitration, have you had any contact with our attorneys at Cohen and Wolf, how this criminal is impacting the civil?
I've sent them the statements the town issued, so they were up to date on all of that.
Okay. And no response from them? They haven't given any advice on civil as it relates to what's happening to the criminal? I just want to make sure that we're up to date.
I know. I'm just giving you a minute to think through, and I think it's been, my recollection right now is that no, simply, that all the communication has really been about, here's what we're issuing as a statement. Did they have any thoughts or advice on that? They had some thoughts. We didn't really, we tend to focus more on what the police investigation was showing and what was taking place at that point, so we did not really mention, other than referencing the civil matter going on, so folks understood that there was both a civil matter and a criminal matter. We've tried to make sure the public is aware that there are two different tracks that's taken place.
Okay. For the record, I'd just like to say that whatever happens with this Gould Manor stuff, the deep, whatever results, I want, as soon as you get those results, forward them to the board. I find this going forward is extremely concerning, that the results of that test,
We're taking that very seriously, and we've put.
I don't want to read about it in the Connecticut Post.
Yep,
I
Mr.
want it to
Bateson, if I could finish, Mr. Bateson, we're taking this very seriously. We've also asked for an expedited timing on the test results, so we should get those back in a few days.
Okay. And overall, I want to echo what Chris said, that the past several days have been very disappointing, that everything I've read has come from the Connecticut Post and your press releases.
Well, everything you've read should have come.
Executive board,
Yeah.
It should be a phone call and just say, I'm not happy about this, but this is what's going on.
Everything you've received has come from this office as quickly as we put it together and had it out there. You're the first to receive it as we put it out.
I'd like more openness on that end.
That's about as open as we can get. We're telling you everything we have.
I read about it in the Post.
So with that, if we're done with that discussion,
For now.
subject to our next meeting with an update?
Yeah, one more thing. I want to make sure that we've had on our agenda multiple times trying to get the Board of Education to fulfill, or asking us, and the RTM even voted on that, the property, signing a 10-year lease. I expect the Board of Education to really, really search hard for another facility.
Okay, I said, are you going to take any action to let them know your thoughts?
I think I just did.
I don't see any Board of Ed members in attendance, so
Okay.
you may want to contact them directly.
I will.
Yeah, I have reached out to several board members.
Very good. Then may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.